the end of our walking journey, and we are about to get in a car, and probably will be in a car for the next little while. We have thoroughly enjoyed the trail, and we thank all of our YouTube followers. We appreciate you following us and having had subscribed. I will go through the comments like I said before, look for the questions. If you have any questions, please put them on. I will follow up and try and answer them to the best of my ability, but there will be no more channels at this point in time.
So we are going to civilization to have a shower, eat food, have a bed for day after day. So it's goodbye to the PCT and thank you, and into civilization.
If anybody is interested, I think my next adventure with my husband, the next big adventure, would probably be a RV trip to Alaska that we hope for. And what about you, Penny? What's going to be yours?
Well, if I don't drop into your trip, I'm off to Nepal to climb Dublin in the Khumbu Valley. It was supposed to be this year, but it's going to be next year.
So we had a question on YouTube about the Osprey Asia pack and how we liked it. I started the trail with an Osprey Asia, the 55 litre. I really like it, it fits well. It's one of the few packs that will have a size suitable for the small frames that we currently have. And my size is an XS, Penny's is a small because she is 2 inches taller than me. And I carried on the trail till about mile 600, so probably had a total of 900 miles on my pack before it was appetizer, dinner and dessert for one of the local varmin. I replaced it at the beginning of this year and had a Osprey, I think it's AG65, a much sturdier pack, able to carry the weight, and I'm glad I did, because the Asia really doesn't feel comfortable after about 30 pounds, and we were carrying excess weight through the Sierras. I changed it back to a new Asia around 1,052 miles, and was very glad I did, because I liked it much better than the bigger Osprey pack. But around mile 1,200, 1,300, both of us noticed the wear holes in the bottom of the mesh, and mine started out with these 2 holes, and it equates to the iliac crest bones at your back. Mine then merged into one big hole.
Tip it up a bit.
And but only for the last few hundred miles. So I want to say it would take 2 packs to complete the PCT. The other problem that we had was probably the foam doesn't come down quite far enough on the shoulder strap here. And after a while, probably the last few hundred miles, I had to put some extra padding on here on my right shoulder to go with the collarbone, and Penny had to do the same for her left shoulder. I did develop one hole in the spandex, but that was just climbing under a tree, and the tree just snagged it. So overall, we both liked the Osprey Asia. I will certainly go with the Asia again, and realise that because they are a lightweight pack, they are time limited and will wear out. But overall, I think we loved them. Good afternoon. Well, it is 1 month post-trail, and as I promised, I am going to answer some questions that people have posted on YouTube. And I will answer for Penny, as well as not much was specific to either one or the other of us. First of all, a couple of facts and figures. It took us 169 days to complete the mileage. We averaged 17 miles a day, including all of the Neros and Zeros. A Nero was counted if we walked less than 8 miles a day for the purposes of me trying to calculate what was a Nero to a zero. When we got to town, sometimes we had walked 20, 22, 23 miles to get to that town, and then we stayed the night, and that I didn't count as a Nero. We averaged 20 miles a day when I took out the Neros and the zeros. And our miles per hour average was 1.9 miles per hour. And that was inclusive of all of the breaks that we took, including morning and afternoon tea and lunch break. For resupply, we had 32 boxes sent to us, and one of those went missing. So we were able to actually make up that resupply because it was only for 3 days. And it was UPS that lost our box, and after probably half a dozen phone calls, they were never ever able to forward that box on to my home address. So it is just lost wherever UPS parcels go. We stayed in, I want to say, a hotel slash motel slash guest house slash cabin slash motor camp type of accommodation for 24 nights. And then we did stay at resorts for 4 nights where we had to stay in our tent. That was the VVR of Vermilion Valley Resort. Oh, it does include one snow day that we hung out in our tent. Kennedy Meadows South, where there is no accommodation other than camping in your tent, and Weevil Food Market, which was a store that picked us up from the trail and brought us down so we could pick a resupply box up, and we stayed in our tent in their backyard, and that was pretty fun because there were other hikers that were staying there as well. Yeah, people ask us about the gear that we use. I've said in the past about the backpacks. I had Osprey for my entire journey through the Sierras. I did use an Osprey AG65. The other times it was a Osprey Asia 55. I am glad I had a bigger, sturdier pack for the Sierras because there is more weight that you need to carry. The Asia does not carry much more than 30 pounds comfortably. I know that because sometimes we had to do long water carries, and I'm sure the pack weight was up to 30, 33 pounds at times, but only for a mile or two. So that's my recommendation. Penny used a Hyperlite for the first part of it and through the Sierras, and sadly she did have to send that back due to the fabric splitting, but that's probably because of the beer can being packed in it, and the pressure on the fabric is what we think. And then she completed the journey with an Osprey Asia 55. In saying that, both of our Asias wore out, so if I was to plan this again, I would plan on having 2 packs available for the entire duration. There are packs out there that might last the whole trip, but I'm not 100% sure on those. I was looking for lightweightness and comfort, and it was a compromise between the two as to why I ended up with the Osprey. We ended up with Feathered Friends petrol 10 degree bags. They were more than adequate for the entire journey. Through the Sierras, I did add a silk liner, and I actually kept that for the rest of the journey because when it became hot I could just sleep in the silk liner, and Penny did the same. I think it was a great sleeping bag. It was a woman's cut sleeping bag, and us being shorter, it made us think that we were not carrying more sleeping bag than what we needed for our size, and we were thankful for that. It is an ultralight sleeping bag, and the fabric is not delicate, but it does need to be treated with care. But mine has certainly lasted the entire trip and will last for a few more trips. The stove. We ended up using a MSR wind burner similar to the Jetboil. It does weigh heavier than the small stoves, but it was quick. We could whip up a cup of tea fairly quickly within 1 to 2 minutes. And I think the speed with which we could boil water made it worth the extra weight. When you get into camp at night and you're tired, the last thing you want to do is cook. So getting the cooking over and done with quickly certainly made things go a lot smoother for us. We started out with a Z-Pax duplex, and when we got into the snow we thought it better to have a tent with 2 walls. So Penny bought a Big Agnes carbon fibre tent. It worked out okay in the Sierras, but it really did not last that long. We did send it back to Big Agnes for some of the shearing on the fabric for warranty issues, but they failed to come to the party and said that we needed to repair it. So that was a bit sad. We did swap it out again to the Z-Pax duplex, and that lasted us very nicely to the end of the trail. We had one little ingress of, we think it was a mouse, eating through the mesh part of the duplex, but not the carbon fibre floor, and we were able to do a trail repair on that, and that lasted us very nicely. We did use a ground sheet under that tent to help preserve the floor, because we knew that we needed this tent to last us the entire trail. We both had Thermarest Neo Air X-Lite women's sleeping pads. Highly recommended. They're very comfortable, and the women's pad has a higher R factor than the men's. Through the Sierras and the snow, we did add a Z-Lite, the folding foam Z-Lite one, to add more insulation, and that worked out very well, and it also helped protect the sleeping pads when we had to put the tent up on a rock surface. We were very careful with the mats. Penny got 1 hole in hers, mine lasted the whole thing. And our luxury items was the Cedar Summit ultralight pillows, which we thoroughly enjoyed having. Neither one of them lasted, and both of us ended up replacing them due to holes. But I think when you use something every day and it's an ultralight product, it might last, it might not. We both had Black Diamond carbon fibre trekking poles. Mine lasted except for the handles. One of the foams started to deteriorate on the handle, and both of the straps needed replacing, but the tips lasted. And then for the same poles, Penny's tips, she ended up replacing them 3 times. So it's difficult to say whether an item is going to last or not last. But those poles I'd highly recommend. They're very light, easy to carry and easy to use. I went through a total of 5 pairs of shoes. I started with a half-worn pair of shoes and ended with a half-worn pair of shoes. So there's my 5. I used trail runners, and through the Sierras I did have boots. My recommendation is, if you've got crampons, is to have a boot that will fit nicely into the crampons. Trail runners do not do very nicely with crampons, and it doesn't take much to change them out when you get to Kennedy Meadows North. I started out with Lone Peak Ultra 4.0s. They were a really good shoe for me. I'd trialed them prior and they worked for me. But at some point along the trail, I was unable to find any more in my size. So I tried a Solomon. That didn't work. So they went pretty quick. They wore out way too quick, probably 200 miles, and I had to throw them out. The foam in the back of the shoe had pretty much worn out and was totally displaced, and I was starting to get blisters around my heel. I then went to a Topo. That was a very good shoe. I enjoyed that shoe. I liked it very much. And then my last shoe that I ended with was Ultra Timps, and that shoe I liked very much as well, and I put that on par with the Topos. So Penny didn't like the zero drop shoe. She couldn't adjust to it even though she tried, and she ended up with a Hoka 1-1 shoe that she really thought were very good for her, and they were lasting her around 300 miles. When we found the shoes that we wanted, we figured out how long our shoes were lasting us, and we would have shoes sent ahead to that particular mileage, so we knew when we were going to change out shoes. Well, we ended up wearing Injinji toe socks and putting Down Tough merino socks over the top of those, and that worked very well. We didn't really suffer blisters that much. The odd time we did, but there are specific reasons why that was caused, and it wasn't due to our socks. It might have been that the shoes were wearing out, the shoes were new, or something around there, but it wasn't a big issue for us. I think our biggest issue with our feet was that they were older, probably a little bit more arthritic, and probably caused us a little bit more pain because of that. But we would elevate them at night time, try and massage them if we could, and just rest them when we could. We did take our shoes off midday whenever we stopped for any length of time, and I think that's incredibly helpful to air out the feet. The rest of the clothing is really specific to you and how you feel about a particular item of clothing on you. I did buy clothing and try it out with my backpack before I left to make sure that it was comfortable with me wearing my backpack and that I felt comfortable in the clothes. I had a pair of Kuhl pants, Kuhl, convertibles, and I really liked them. They fit me. They were a petite style, and I think for a shorter person they were a really nice fit. I went through probably 1.5 pairs of those. The first pair did wear out around the cuff, but the second pair are still looking good. And with everything else, it's just whatever you like to wear and what works for you. I did try a Z-Pax Vertice jacket, but I found it just way too long, and Penny did continue with hers, but I returned mine and ended up with a Montbell lightweight raincoat, and that was that sufficed for us. So it's what works for you. Well, Penny bought New Zealand dehydrated food over with her at a cost of around $2,000 for the food. There was quite a great variety. Food is very cultural. There are different tastes in different countries. A roast chicken dehydrated meal in New Zealand is made differently to a roast chicken dehydrated meal in the United States. So we decided to go with what we liked because food is very important on the PCT. And my husband Paul was able to send that to us in resupply packages. We were also able to get different things, like Penny liked the yogurt and muesli dehy that you can't get here, and that worked for her. I'm happy with oats and dehydrated fruit, so that worked for me. The snacks, we were particular as to what we liked. I don't like the Cliff type bars, so I liked fig bars, and I was able to shop at Costco ahead of time, buy a few boxes, and they were included in the resupply. Penny did like some of the protein bars, and she bought some ahead of time and also as we went along the trail. Some of our snacks were included in our resupply boxes, but we also relied on adding to those in the places where we stopped at. And saying that, not every place is great for resupply, and our resupply strategy was very different due to COVID. Initially, there was nothing open that would give us anything of substance for food, so we were very thankful for the resupply boxes that pretty much included everything we needed. Most places were closed initially, and that's okay, but it changed how we resupplied. And then there are a couple of places in Washington that are, regardless of what year it is, I think are not good for resupply. Namely, that was in Skykomish and Stehekin. Neither of those places you could resupply at. You do need a box. We were thankful for the boxes. We could have our personal items included, things like small sunscreens, small toothpaste. If we needed to replace something, we weren't getting multiple packages. It was all included in one box. And as far as where you collect them, we learnt very early on to try not to use the post office, even though that is easy and convenient in some places. My first choice was to actually look for a business that we were going to patronize to have our box sent to. Like in Cascade Locks, we were going to stay at the Best Western, so I had the box sent there. We had one day in Southern California that we had to wait for the post office to open. And then at Old Station, we ended up going through that area on a Sunday, and we knew that on the Friday. So on the Friday, I called and got that box bounced forward to Mount Shasta, and then we did have some leftover food, but we just had to make do with what we could find at the store in Old Station. So for us, it was easier to have the boxes sent to a business that was willing to accept them for us. Sometimes it cost us to pick them up, sometimes it didn't, but it didn't matter. It made our life much easier to do it that way. How we got home? Well, going to Canada was not an option for us, as the Canadian border had put the permits on hold as far as I was aware. So we did have to walk back to Harts Pass. And Harts Pass is a forest road. It is not for the faint-hearted to be driving up in their Prius, I guess. I don't know. But there is a campground at the top of Harts Pass. There are some people that tried hitching, but that's time consuming, and it's an hour and a half to the nearest town. So we decided on getting a local shuttle service that does run transportation to trailheads up that way. That was Methau Motion Transportation, I think. They were a great service, excellent service. There are trail angels that you can actually pre-arrange with as well. We ran into Piper in Skykomish, who said if we're stuck, that if we gave him a call, we could come and he would come and get us. With that in mind, there is no cell phone service at Harts Pass, so everything needs to be pre-arranged. I was able to use my Garmin InReach to message, and that was the only way that we could get messages out at Harts Pass. So once you're in Harts Pass and you arrange a ride out of Harts Pass, it's where you go to from there. And we picked Twisp. I was very unfamiliar with the location of all of these towns around there, and I picked Twisp because that's where the transport company had their main office. And I wasn't kind of thinking at that point in time how I was going to get out of Twisp. Another couple that came with us on our transportation out of Harts Pass needed to go to somewhere where they could rent a vehicle, and the closest place to Harts Pass was Wenatchee, but a trail angel was able to pick them up from Twisp and take them there. Thankfully, I have a great friend who is retired and was wanting a road trip, and she came up to Twisp to pick us up. That was Jama in her nice red Tundra, and that was really enjoyable. I booked a hotel for the night ahead of time. She took 2 days to get up to Twisp from Sacramento, and we stayed the night in Twisp, and then we took 2 days to drive back home to Sacramento out of Twisp. But it's important to think about how you're going to get out of these towns that you get transportation to, and I really didn't think about that, but having a great friend was certainly helpful in that. I might have changed the town that I got shuttled to if I had to do something different. And then we also thought that maybe we could get a ride over to either Bellingham or Seattle and Amtrak back down to Sacramento. That was probably our last option, and flying out of Seattle was also an option that we thought about. But I have to thank Jama for coming up to pick us up and for a very enjoyable ladies' road trip on the way home.
I've been alone before, but never with you. Your mind is not where your heart is. But let me tell you, you're gonna be alright. It's not a wish, it's a promise. It's a different kind of lonely, it's a different kind of sad. 'Cause we got no more if only, and we stopped feeling bad. It's a different kind of sadness, it's a different kind of fear. Now we're stuck in this waitlist, and the end is getting near. So I'm moving on. Yeah, I'm moving on. It's like they're all watching, we're on our way to the ground. And I don't love you the same way. We're still moving, but without a sound. God knows it's a long way down. It's a different kind of lonely, it's a different kind of sad. 'Cause we got no more if only, and we stopped feeling bad. It's a different kind of sadness, it's a different kind of